Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us for these voices from practitioners and food sharers. We're delighted to be joined by Stephen Hayden, who is the chairperson of Muck and Magic Community Garden in Dublin, Ireland. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. Perhaps you could start by telling us a little bit about the work that Muck and Magic do.
Okay, well, Muck and Magic, it's a relatively small community garden in a suburb of Dublin, Ballymun, which some of your participants may be familiar with, and it caters for a wide range of participants, different age groups, and different client base. We engage with schools locally, with the local the community mental health team through the health board, and we also have local community residents of the local community who come along on a regular basis to take part in the various activities in the garden, mainly focused on food production in terms of fruit and vegetable production using organic principles, but also focusing on the importance of ornamental gardening in terms of developing the gardens for biodiversity and a broad range of wildlife and creating habitats in their own gardens to the extent that they can, but also to create an environment, a green space in Ballymun, which provides a range of habitats, providing for biodiversity, and is an educational and recreational resource for the community. I suppose it consists of a number of different areas. There's your traditional sort of areas in the community garden, those vegetable beds, soft fruit, top fruit, polytunnel, and that kind of thing. But there's also a small wooded area, which gives us an added element to the garden in terms of what we can provide as an educational resource. It's been in existence for about 10 years, and it has gone from strength to strength over the years, due really to the work of a small core of very dedicated community gardeners. I can't claim to have been the founder of the garden, and some of the people who've been around longer than me have put in the work. So I think credit would go to a lot of people like Ronnie McConnell and people like that who would be associated with the garden, who over the years have sustained it and helped it grow.
Fantastic, thank you. And could you tell us a little bit about why it was set up in the first place?
Well, I don't know how many of your participants are familiar with Ballymun as a sort of a community. Ballymun was, back in the 60s, was touted as the new way to provide urban housing in cities, and it was high-rise apartment blocks. Unfortunately, over the years, the resources were not put into maintaining the community, and a lot of issues arose over the years, of social issues, economic issues that I won't bore your listeners with today. But there's a history of social issues and economic issues in the community, but also because large numbers of the residents grew up in a flats complex where they didn't have access to a green space or a garden, and that was very limiting in terms of the experience that was afforded to people, particularly young kids and children, to be outdoors in a green space, and to have that sort of that input into their lives, to be able to get out and about somewhere safe and secure, and also have that kind of learning experience of being outdoors and understanding how food grows, and to have access to nature. So I suppose there are a couple of reasons for the community garden that was established, really to give that to a community which really was crying out for a resource such as that. And so it's really important and a vital lifeline for a lot of people in terms of having access to an outdoor space. And it was a very important area, not just for food production, but also a communal space and a communal hub where people of different ages and backgrounds can come together. So it creates an environment for community engagement and also informal education for a wide range of people. And so a big part of the impetus behind establishing the garden was to create that kind of green. It's a small oasis really in a community that really was a very urban, grey environment for many years. Now, the regeneration has taken place in the last 20 years, and the old tower blocks and flat complexes have been demolished, and there's no shortage of green space at present. But certainly community gardens such as Muck and Magic were really important in terms of providing a resource to the community over the last decade.
Fantastic, thank you for sharing that. And you've touched on it briefly there in that response, but could you also tell me a bit about the different impacts you see Muck and Magic having?
Well, I suppose what we what we've tried to do, certainly in recent times, more and more now, is there is a core group of volunteers who come and who really rely on the garden as somewhere to go on a regular basis, to get outdoors for their mental and physical health, and to learn about how to grow fruit and vegetables. A big part of the focus of the community garden, as with all community gardens, is to provide access to fresh fruit and vegetables for people who maybe wouldn't have access, or would be limited in their resources and their ability to source wide range of fresh fruit and vegetables. And the garden gives us an opportunity to grow a much broader range of those type of crops, much broader than maybe people would have access to in the local shops. So it gives that element. So there's that access to fresh fruit and vegetables. There's the health benefits of being out and about. There's the community engagement element. There's also, I suppose, what we want to focus on increasingly, and we have in recent times, is to reach out to local schools, particularly preschools and creches, the community mental health team, as I mentioned before, and to start to link people into an understanding of where the food comes from, how food is produced, the work that goes into production of the food they have on their tables and they buy in the shops, and the resources that it takes to produce food on a regular basis. And if we can improve that understanding, we can improve people's appreciation of where food comes from. We can maybe address issues such as nutrition and health, but also food waste, and also we want to focus increasingly on how you prepare food. So rather than hand people a bag of onions and potatoes and tomatoes and send them away with it, what we would like to start focusing on is how that transition from the plot to the plate takes place, and how people can use the produce that's produced in the garden to create sort of healthy meals.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today, Stephen. It was great to learn more about your work with Muck and Magic and the impact it is having. If you'd like to learn more from Stephen, he'll be talking to Louise tomorrow about the future of Muck and Magic and the future he sees for food sharing in Ireland. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks.